Welcome to today's session, how to plan effective content for your website. This is the agenda for what I'll be covering today. What is a content strategy and why do you need one? How do you create your own? A short comfort break followed by part 2 of creating your own and finishing us up with a Q&A session at the end. So, what is a content strategy? A content strategy is all about creating relevant content that engages and activates your visitors. It's about creating content that your visitors will find valuable, and it's about curating that content so that visitors can navigate through your site easily and find what they came for. And it's also about being clear about what you want your content to achieve so you can measure how effective it is and if it's doing the job properly. A content strategy helps your vision become a reality by using strategic objectives that speak to your audiences effectively. And by using tactics, you can make sure that your objectives perform well. This little diagram shows the flow of a visitor through your website over time. First, you attract them to the site. They learn all about you. You engage them with really valuable content, and this converts them into followers, purchasers, clients, and so on. And once you have them in your database, you can reward them and keep them informed, which in turn retains them and keeps them coming back. And this helps you grow your organization and bring your vision as an organization to life. It's also worth considering that there will be 2 types of visitors to your site, those that know you and those that are discovering you. Each of these types will want to be communicated to differently. I wouldn't need to know what you do as an organization if I'm already a supporter of yours, for example. If I was new to you, then I'd need to know more about what you do and how I can use you and how I can help you even. So why is it a good idea to create a content strategy? There are loads of reasons, but I think the main ones are purpose. If you're clear about what you want to do, your visitors are going to understand how to use your website. Messaging. It helps you communicate effectively and it helps you communicate effectively if you know who you're talking to. And trust. It helps you create content that gives you authority and it helps you give your visitors things that they will find valuable. Advocacy. It helps you build a loyal community and tribe. And success, because ultimately great content that works hard for you helps your organization grow. Sounds good, eh? So let's move on to how you can create your own content strategy and my step-by-step process. It all starts with a vision. What do you want? The first thing you need to do is think about your purpose as an organization. What's your North Star? Where are you trying to get to? Your vision for the organization is your prediction of what the future could look like and where you want to be in that future. All you need is a snappy description of your organization's purpose. It should summarize what you do, how you do it, and why in a short sentence. Effective vision statements act as a guiding light and helps you communicate the big picture. If you don't have one, it's a great idea to create one because it'll help you focus on defining the objectives that bring you the most impact. Here are a few examples to inspire you. Who do you think the companies are behind them? Whose mission is it to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful? Pop any ideas in the chat. I'll give you a minute. If you guessed Google, top marks. Who wants to enrich lives with programs and services that inform, educate, and entertain? Ideas in the chat. It's a bit of a tricky one, this. Could have been Netflix, but no, it's the BBC. And finally, who wants to give everyone the power to create and share ideas and information instantly without barriers? This one's an easy one, surely. That's right, it's Twitter. All of these mission statements help inform the objectives that bring the most impact, that drive these businesses forward. That's both internally and externally, because I think it's a really good idea that you communicate these messages from within as well. This is part of the first step of defining what you need. And now you've got a lovely vision statement. It's time to define the purpose of your content. How is it valuable for your visitors? What's bringing them to your site and what do you want them to do? An easy trick I've got for doing this is to imagine that your website is another member of your team. If you had to write a job description for that role, what would it be? Think about how they can help you and your team by automating tasks and integrating functionality like the newsletter signups or CRM information. What can the website be doing for your site visitors to get them where you want them to go and help them communicate with you, sign up for things or make purchases? Your website is a big investment, and if you have a clear expectation of what it should be doing, you're going to be able to evaluate and measure its performance, just like you would for any other member of your team. When you know what the content needs to do for you, you can set objectives. What are objectives? Effective objectives are measurable, achievable, and specific. They can be things like sell 50% more tickets in the next 2 years, or increase donations by 20% in the year 2021, or perhaps growing our mailing list by 200% by 2022. It's a good idea to have around 3 primary objectives. And the primary objectives are the things that are most important to you, the things that you really should be doing to get your vision in action. You can also set yourself secondary objectives, which are things you'd also like to happen that aren't so critical. And if you prioritize them like this, it'll help you focus your activities around things that matter the most. Let's take a look at the English Touring Opera website. What do you think the objectives are for this site? Pop your comments in the chat. I'll give you a minute or two to have a little think about that. I'm not going to hover my buttons or mouse in any particular direction to influence you. But you know, there's a few interesting things going on here. I think the primary objectives are around booking tickets, watching on-demand content, and encouraging donations from the little heart on the top right hand of the screen. When you click on the menu up here, it expands to a whole new universe of options. So it helps you delve a bit deeper and navigate to other places on the site. What do you think their secondary objectives are for the site? Pop a few ideas in the chat and see what you think they could be. I think there are plenty of secondary objectives, aren't there? Sort of around awareness of what they do, subscriptions for the mailing list, hiring artists, opera for kids, and so on. And now I bet the next time you look at a website from now on, you'll notice what their objectives might be. The next thing you need to define are the people you want to attract to the site and put them into groups. Who are you talking to broadly? Are they ticket bookers, parents, potential funders, educators, perhaps? And when you've identified who you're trying to talk to, you can articulate what you want them to do. When you start breaking things down like this, it can help you visualize the functionality you'll need and the relevant content and messaging you'll need to speak with people effectively. We'll break this down a bit more later on. The next step is auditing. And the reason I'm talking about auditing is because you might already have some great content that you can repurpose or redefine or reuse. Because so far we've defined your vision and the purpose of the site, and we've set some objectives, and we've thought about who we're talking to and how it could help us meet our objectives. And we've even dipped briefly into the content you need to support it. So it's a really good point in the process to understand where you are now. And you probably only need to run through that first part once, because once you have it set, you're set for life, as it were. You already have a strategy around what you've already got and what you need to achieve. So in terms of looking at the site and the content that you've already got, how does this measure up with what you want to achieve and your objectives? Is it working well? Do you monitor and measure the effectiveness? You can use analytics tools to assess and decide this. You might want to keep it, rewrite it, or remove it. James, our tech champion for analytics and data, has created tons of resources around this, which I recommend you explore. You can find them on our site, but for now, I just wanted you to know that this evaluation is an important part of the process, because you might have content that you can already repurpose, that you can get more traction out of. I've also got a content audit spreadsheet resource that I can share with you after the webinar. Basically, it helps you log and evaluate what you already have. Another part of this process is looking at what else there is in the landscape. What are other people doing? We can often look at our peers' websites and learn some really neat things to try for ourselves. Taking the time to research what's going on within your space can really help fill you up with some great ideas. But sometimes it's just as valuable to get inspiration from outside the art space as well. I was talking with an organization recently who were thinking about creating a type of directory for artists so people could find a good act and book them directly. Essentially, what they wanted to do was really similar in business model terms to Uber and Airbnb. They would have a similar legal implications, a similar user experience and challenges, and would be serving the gig economy model with their idea. By looking at what these sites have done, they were able to think about their content and site in a whole new way. So it's definitely worth considering learning from booking pathways on other websites or other types of content others use to gain traction outside the confines of the art space. It can be a really great source of inspiration. We'll have a 5-minute break now so you can relax and absorb what we've just gone over. So it's by my clock, it's 2:15. I'll see you back here at 2:20. Welcome back, everyone. Let's move on now. So, content depth, the bite, the snack, and the meal. When we're thinking about content, it's important to think about what you need to deliver your hungry website visitors. A good way to frame this is to think about it as content bites, snacks, and meals. The bite will give someone a flavour, just a light touch. Sometimes that's all they need to take an action. If they're intrigued by that little taster, they can have a bit more information with a snack. Content that leads to a little bit more explaining. And finally, if it's the kind of content that needs a lot more depth, you can deliver the meal. It's a way of leading someone through the content and can also be used to weight the size of the stuff that you need to produce depending on what you want them to do and what you'll think that they'll need to know. So before our stomachs all start rumbling with all this food talk, I thought I'd better show you what I mean. What do you think this is? A bite, a snack, or a meal? You can pop some answers in the chat. See if you can guess what this types of content is. I think the headline here is I can see some nice comments coming through. The headline is this is the bite, isn't it? It gives you a flavour. This bit here is the snack, and the donate button leads you to the full meal. You can see the some more snacks down here as well. Actually, these are bites, aren't they? More bites down here. What about this one? It's a pop-up window. It's definitely a bite, right? So you don't need too much information for this, but it's something that needs to just grab someone's attention for a little split second, and then it's an easy action to get them to go away, to take it away and move on. What about this? I think these are all little bites and snacks again, leading to the meals. The newsletter sign up is a good example of a snack, not too difficult to fill in and do the job effectively. And if you wanted, you could always have a strategy to collect more information about them over time, but only if you needed it. The best practice approach when you're collecting data is just to collect the minimum you need. This can save you a lot of GDPR and compliance storage headaches. And what do you think this is? A bite, a snack, or a meal? I think you're probably getting the hang of this already. It's definitely a meal, right? The information someone needs to know about booking an event on the event details bit can go a lot more into depth. Locations, times, prices, what other people thought, anything you think that they would need to know to make that choice to book, and so on. Okay, so let's move on to the next step, which is identify. I want to talk about how to spot opportunities for content. Let's dive back a bit into our audience groups, and you'll see from the list here that there are certain things that you'll need functionally. But the top item, learn about us, is potentially a rich area for content that you could explore for opportunities. What kind of content would you create to help people discover you? What types of content could you create to excite people about what you're doing? Pop some ideas in the chat again if you like. I'm talking specifically about the learn about us part. We know that it's parents that you're talking to here. What do they need to see to make them feel like you're the best place for them to go to get their children excited about music and on their way to learning an instrument? What might they be searching for? What could you create that would engage and activate them? Here are a few ideas for content that I thought of. It could be article posts and videos that allow you to show how good you are at thought leadership, with a call to action at the end to entice people to find out about your classes or other offerings. Similarly, with how-to or instructional content, this type of content is particularly useful for people who want to learn how to do something that's fun and shareable, It could include quizzes and puzzles or games. You could also talk about specific tips or teaching methods, the types of things that people might search for, like how to tune an instrument, for example. And location-based content is a brilliant thing to do for people trying to find you in Google searches, because a lot of people will use a location in the question they pop into Google, like guitar lessons in Tottenham or something like that. Our tech champion Hansel's got some really great tips for search engine optimization, by the way. So definitely pop on over to the Digital Culture Network website if you'd like to find out some more about that. Whilst you're planning the content, it's also a great idea to think about the promotional side of things too. What will you need to push that content out in your newsletters, social media, YouTube and Instagram, and all that kind of good stuff? So often I hear people getting stuck about what to share on social media or the content they put into their newsletters. And really, they already have what they need with some great content right there on their website. Again, Peggy, who can talk to you about newsletters, and Hayden, who's an expert in social media, have created some great resources around these topics. So I won't go into too much more detail here, but definitely check out the website to delve a bit deeper. And just to add to this, here are some top tips for you. Firstly, really try to think about the content in context with your objectives. Create content that will help deliver the results you want. And with that in mind, can you create content that solves a problem? Can you create content around common questions you get asked about? Can you provide something valuable like a download or a resource, which you could also brand up and include links inside in case it gets shared? What kinds of content will you need and what formats do you need it in? Do we need to do something special for a mobile friendly user version? Is this content a bite, a snack, or a full-blown meal? Once you start thinking of ideas, you can pop them all in a list. You don't need to do it all at once. You can gradually and methodically see what works well and expand from there. Also helps you stop from having those moments where you can't think of what to do content-wise. The next step is creation. Now you've gotten this far, you'll notice that the content creation bit is actually the simple step. You've done all the work to get the ideas. You already know what format you want it in. You even know what objective it's helping to achieve. So when you actually get to the making of it, one tip I can suggest is to try using wireframes to plan out the layout of your content before you create it. This will help you visualize what you want to write or create. Wireframes are wireframe outlines are the general shape and placement of content and content on a page without going into any detail. They give you a guideline for format, image, video, text, bite, snack, meal, and so on. Typically, people use wireframes in the process of designing an entire website, but in this case, I'm suggesting you use it to scope out roughly what you need to start you off. This helps prevent you from over-creating or doing too much because you'll roughly know what it is you're aiming for in the end product, so it can be a bit of a time saver. And this means you just now need to make it and figure out how you'll measure its effectiveness. Is it things like time on page? Is that less time on page or more time on page, depending on if it's a bite, a snack, or a meal? Is it button clicks, downloads, all that kind of good stuff? Video views. It's worth noting down the metrics you're going to use to measure the effectiveness so that you can set it up on your site analytics. This is the way that you're going to know if it's working or not. The only other thing I want to say about creating content is that Dean has made some really great resources around video content that you should definitely head onto the website to check out, because those have got some great advice around these topics. The final step is to curate. So far, we've defined what we want to achieve. We've audited what we already have. We've identified what we need to create and made a plan. The last step is to curate that into a beautiful experience on the site itself. A user journey is the experience of navigating and using the content on your site. We looked earlier at the techniques the English touring opera had used on their site to prioritize the user journey around the primary and secondary objectives. So when you're planning your user journey, think about how to make it as easy and obvious as possible to navigate through the content on your site. If you're clear about what you want people to do, it's also going to be obvious for them to be able to achieve that for you. They're going to feel safe in the knowledge of how to travel through your website. It's also a great idea to include a call to action or next step within your content and guide them to that once their original journey has come to an end. So on the Digital Culture Network site, lots of our articles have, you might also like content at the end of the page. And this basically means that you don't leave people at a dead end and always lead them onto something else they might like. By using simple, direct language and strong calls to action like book now, become a member, or support us, it means that your visitors don't have to guess what they need to do. And by asking people that use your site for feedback, you can uncover some really great hidden gems to make your user journeys even better. And as part of the whole content strategy, you should always consider accessibility. There's lots of accessibility resources on the website also that you can check out that I've created before. As artists and creatives, you already know how to deliver great experiences, and your website is just an extension of that. The material you have to share enriches people's lives, and it really isn't a hard sell to get someone excited about what you do or give people a reason to love and champion you. So it's quite exciting. And user journeys apply to both desktop and mobiles and tablets and so on. So don't forget about this throughout the process. Something that works well on a desktop can often be really dreadful to use on a on a mobile. So consider if you need to make shorter versions, move up the call to action buttons, create different sizes to fit the mobile screen, and all of that good stuff too. It's worth checking out your analytics to see what traffic split your site has between mobiles and desktop visitors and how they're accessing your content, and to make sure you can focus your efforts on the platform that your visitors are using the most first, so you can prioritize whether you change it on a desktop or a mobile first. By designing for mobiles, you're also making your site faster and easier to load and essentially more accessible. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on this because it's a way to help you refine the effectiveness of an objective. Because once you've set up your site and you've created and curated the content, if you want to see if there's any improvement for one of your objectives, take a look at your analytics that you've set up to measure them. Let's say the objective is to get more ticket purchases for an event. If you're not getting enough traffic to that page where people can buy tickets, then you're looking at tactics around the attract pillar to get more people to that page, more traffic. Maybe social media posts, paid advertising, newsletter content, tactics that will drive more traffic to that page. What if you're getting loads of traffic to the page, but no one is really buying a ticket? Then you work on tactics to convert your visitors. Check the purchase functionality is working first, of course, because this could be the most obvious and easy fix. But aside from that, you could move the buy button up the page, make it brighter and bigger. Maybe you need to create more event information. Is all the information that someone needs to make that decision to book a ticket there on the page? Basically, there are all sorts of tactics you can try to make it convert better. And finally, if part of that objective was to get people who have come to the other shows that you'd put on in the past and you'd want to get them coming back, you'd be looking at retain tactics to get people coming back and booking again. Things like a discount code for them to use, or sending out an email, or remarketing campaigns. And remarketing campaigns involve advertising to people that have previously visited your site, so that you show them relevant advertising or a particular page on their site, on your site. So things like that can really help with the retain tactics. It's all about coming up with a hypothesis. I think that by making the buy now button bigger, it will make it easier to book. Make the change, measure the results. If not, if it doesn't work, then you can try another thing until you hit on an experiment that works really well. There's a tool called Google Optimize that can help you do this really easily and efficiently. This is the simple rinse and repeat visualization of the cycle that you can run through to make sure all your content is working well. It's a good idea to measure what you're doing, assess whether it's working, and experiment with tactics to see if you can make it perform even better. And if you're looking for some inspiration, there's a cool tool from content resource hub from called the Content Creators Hub from Google. Hayden will pop a link in the chat for you, and I'll also send it out with the resources from this webinar too. Essentially, it's just full of inspirations, tips and tricks and all that sort of stuff. So it's good to go, a good place to go to if you're stuck for ideas. So that's about it from me today. Time for some Q&A. Has anyone got any questions, Hayden?
Okay, so there's no questions yet, but give it time, give it time. Let the information marinate. Has anybody got any questions for us? Just looking through the chat now.
I thought there would be quite lots of questions. That's why I left quite a bit of time at the end.
It's on the money. See, when you're on the money, you know what I mean?
I know.
Google Analytics, any guides on using this?
I am not the expert in this, but you know who is? We've got a tech champion whose absolute speciality is Google Analytics. And he's actually created, it's James, and he's actually created some absolutely fantastic previous webinars on how to get your head around analytics from start to finish. So, and there's a few webinars on it on the Digital Culture Network site that I'll put in the resources.
What else do we see? I think that's it.
Is it? Amazing.
Just put the link for the Google Analytics question.
Oh, someone's asking me to show the first slide again. I think in the chat it says, "Would you show the first slide again?" It had a heart shape and words around it. I'll see if I can bring it up. One moment. I think it was this one. This one. There we go. This shows the sort of things that you need to think about when you're creating your content strategy.
I've got a good question here from Rachel. They're particularly interested in making their website more accessible. Are there any good places to go for more info on this?
I've actually created a webinar specifically on this subject, so I'll make sure that I send that out with the resources for this session, because it's quite in depth, and there's lots of things you need to consider, but it'll help you formulate an accessibility plan, and it has some really good resources signposted within it as well. So I definitely make sure I send that out. Oh, and Anna is asking, how often would you review your objectives? I would probably do that at least once or twice a year, because if you're keeping the objectives relevant to what you need the organization and the vision, your vision to achieve, you might think of new objectives or it might be that your remit changes slightly, or you develop in some way that you hadn't foreseen before. So it's always good to have a review of those at least a couple of times a year. What would you say, Hayden? I think it's probably a good amount of time, isn't it? Every
Oh,
6
yeah,
months.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If your objectives change, or your,
Yeah.
like Roberta said, if your mission changes or what you're trying to achieve, then you just tailor them accordingly.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Any more questions there?
Can't see any.
That's it.
I think that's it. Well, thank you ever so much, everybody, for coming today. I hope you found it really useful.